Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. The countdown continues. Only 90 days now till the World Championship match starts. Less than 3 months. On Chess to Impress I'm continuing the build-up, the countdown towards the match by looking at all the other 46 events for the world title. We've arrived at Lasker against Steinitz. Steinitz was the first world champion, and as you can see he defended his title successfully 3 times, but then he came up against the young Emanuel Lasker from Prussia, which is now Germany. Here's a picture from the 1894 match. The defending champion Steinitz on the left and his challenger on the right. It was Chigorin and Tarash who played a match to determine who was the main challenger. That match ended in a draw. And in the meantime, 25-year-old Emanuel Lasker had agreed on a match with 57-year-old Steinitz. And that match was played in New York, Philadelphia and Montreal. $2,000 prize money for each player, and the winner will be the first one to win 10 games with draws not counting. The time control was 15 moves per hour, and Steinitz was confident. He declared before the match he would win without a doubt. But he didn't. Lasker won by 10 wins to 5 and became the second world champion. In this video we'll look at a crucial game, Game 7. It was the 3rd of April 1894, Lasker had the white pieces and the defending champion Steinitz had the black pieces. e4 from the challenger, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have another Spanish defense, d6, d4, bishop d7, knight c3, and Steinitz plays the Steinitz defense, knight g e7. Here bishop c4 was played in an earlier game, but bishop e3 was the choice of Lasker for this game. Steinitz played the knight to g6, queen d2, bishop e7 developing, Lasker castled queenside, a6 kicking the bishop, bishop back to e2, and Steinitz took in the center. Knight takes, and here's an instructive moment. Lasker takes with the queen to avoid the exchange of another piece. If he had taken with the bishop, then Steinitz could have played bishop g5. And because of the skewer, you have to play your bishop back, and then another piece comes off the board. By taking with the queen, Lasker avoids this, keeps more pieces on the board. Bishop f6, hitting the queen, queen dropped back, and the bishop went to c6. Knight d5 from Lasker, and Steinitz castled. Kasparov writes in his book My Great Predecessors, White has obtained slightly the freer game from the opening, but now suddenly Lasker sharply disrupts the positional balance, and he does so with a thrust that we see a lot in modern chess. The g-pawn, g4 is Lasker's choice. Pawns don't move backwards, Kasparov writes. It's hard to say if this aggressive move was made to unsettle his opponent, or if Lasker had a concrete idea behind it. Lasker himself, in his analysis after the game, suggested that f3 was a logical move. But he played g4. Rook e8 from Steinitz, and g5. Steinitz finds the right answer. He takes the knight on d5, which is better than moving the attacked bishop away. Queen takes, and rook e5, hitting the queen. Again, not moving the attacked bishop on f6. Here Kasparov says queen takes b7 is better, but Lasker drops the queen back to d2. And now black can take on g5, with an exclamation mark by Kasparov, although it looks for a moment that white now wins a piece with f4, as played by Lasker. A simple fork. But the world champion had looked further. He took on e4, and after f takes g5, he played queen e7, winning the piece back as the Two bishops are lined up on the e-file. One of them will drop. Kasparov gives bishop f3 here. Rook takes, and then bishop takes b7. He says this suggests itself with only some advantage for black. But Lasker plays rook df1, and that gets a question mark from Kasparov. Black takes his piece back, and you can ask the question, is this not just two extra pawns for black? Kasparov calls it a difficult, probably lost position for white. White's only option is an attack on the king side, and that's what we'll see. It's going to get very exciting. Bishop c4 from Lasker, and he is now attacking f7 with two pieces. Rook f8 is the most logical, but Steinitz covers the f7 pawn in a more eccentric way, typical for his style. The knight in the corner, covering f7. Typical Steinitz. h4, white has to attack. c6 and g6. And as Kasparov writes, there now begins a sequence of irrational play in which Lasker, as it transpires, is superior to his opponent. The problem of this position is that in nearly all variations black is close to a win, but everywhere white retains some counter chances. To evaluate where there are more of them and where there are less is not easy, and for more than a dozen moves Steinitz is obliged to solve a problem: how not to lose my decisive advantage. And as we know, attacking in chess is easier than defending, and this is a very good example of that. After g6, h takes g6 is better according to Kasparov, but Steinitz plays d5, hitting the bishop. Lasker takes on h7 with check, an in-between move. King takes, and now he saves the bishop with check. King back, and Kasparov writes, by Steinitz standards this position is won for black, but Lasker keeps fighting. h5, rook e8. All these three pieces are beautiful, dominating the e-file, but this piece is a problem for black. h6, g6, keeping the lines closed to the king. White gives a check, king g7, and here a very nice maneuver from Lasker, which we see a lot in modern chess, but in 1894 this was new. He plays king b1, and Kasparov writes, in this game there is something of the Tal element. White's attack is rather abstract, but it will not come to an end. All the time some threats arise. Queen e5 from the world champion, and a3. Lasker's last two quiet moves were completely inexplicable to his contemporaries. How can you play this way when 2 pawns down, writes Kasparov. Lasker takes the time to put his king safe. c5 from Steinitz. Queen f2, c4, hitting the bishop, and Kasparov says bishop takes g6, it looks attractive, it's not good. F takes g6, and then queen h4, threatening checkmate with queen h6, but black very coolly has knight f7, covering the h6 square, and black is winning here. So after c4, taking on g6 is not good. Queen h4 was played by Lasker. f6, making a square for the king. And now bishop f5, what a move. Kasparov writes, a key moment to keep his attack alive. Lasker now also gives up a piece. He sensed that a misplaced black king and a sleeping knight on h8 give white excellent compensation. Steinitz played king f7 straight away. Rook hg1, and now Steinitz took the piece. Lasker gave a check. King stepped further away from the danger zone. And rook g8, another great move. Poor Steinitz. Yes, I said it before, defending is much more difficult than attacking, and Lasker is throwing everything at the world champion. King d6, and rook takes f5. Look at black's knight, and the difference in king safety. No surprise that white has compensation here. Queen e6, saving the queen. Lasker swaps a pair of rooks and takes on f6 with check. King has to go further into open space. Queen h6, and now the decisive mistake. It's very complicated. Kasparov analyzes and says rook e2 is the best move, and that saves black. But that's impossible for a player to fight over the board. Steinitz played rook e7 instead. Rook f8 does not work now. It looks very strong, but black gets out of trouble with rook takes h7 and is winning here. Quite a nice shot. But after rook e7, queen h2 was played by Lasker. It gets 2 exclamation marks from Kasparov, and he calls it quite brilliant. Queen d7 from Steinitz. Queen g1 check, and you have to play d4. If you play the king to b5, then you get checkmated in 2 moves. Queen b6 check, king a4 only move, and checkmate on b4. So after the check from the queen, you have to play d4, and queen g5 was played, another check, queen d5, and now black is losing the queen. Rook f5 wins the queen. Queen takes, king d6, and the last move of the game, queen f6 check, winning the lonely knight on h8 as well. Steinitz resigned. One last quote from Kasparov's my great predecessors on this game. He says, "In this game, balancing on the edge of abyss, the young Lasker demonstrated those qualities that were to enable him to hold the crown of world champion for such a long time. In a difficult position, he managed to set his opponent very tricky problems, typical of the level of chess in the second half of the 20th century. Lasker was far ahead of his time, and it is hard to blame Steinitz for his mistakes. He fought with all his might, under a continual and savage attack. Because this ultra-tense game was ahead of its time, it was overshadowed and remained underrated. Their contemporaries simply could not understand what happened in it. I think that the 7th game became the decisive one in the match, breaking Steinitz's resistance." And this was a big blow to Steinitz indeed. He lost a further 4 games in a row after this one. And after 19 games, Emanuel Lasker was the 2nd official and undisputed world champion. But the old fighter Steinitz was not finished yet. As you can see, 2 years later he got a rematch against Lasker. And that's the subject of the next video. Hope you enjoyed this video on the first Steinitz-Lasker match. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, I will read them all and I will reply. You also may want to check out my Chess2 Progress channel. The link is in the description box. And the playlist of this 100 days till Carlsen-Caruana series is also in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.